Testing.
Good evening, folks. Let me say that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We are at the December 2024 Monmouth Regional Chamber of Commerce Chambercast. We're wrapping up a successful 2024, and we're going to be talking about something very important today: relationships. Why do I say that? I'm channeling some fantastic comments from some time ago that really resonated with me. We're talking about our relationship with food, right? But much more than that. I want to thank Shared Universe Podcast for being Chen, Bellworks, of course, Ralph Zucker. We have three great guests today, and what we're going to do, we're starting a little bit early, and we may do some intros afterwards, but we're going to dive right into the material because we want to make sure we stay on our time frames. We have three great guests. We're going to be talking about healthy weight loss and nutrition. Dr. Peter Ferrugia is with us, interventional vascular cardiologist. He's a fellow who does not want you on his table. And we're going to talk about how people tend to come back. And so let's just get the conversation over with on how to really tie all of these things together: the physical, the mental, the emotional, the behavioral issues, because folks have conversations about healthy weight loss for decades. It would be nice to sum it up so people can move forward and really have all the tools and techniques at their disposal to make a better life for themselves, and very particularly also their children and their grandchildren. Dr. Ferrugia is opening a new center he and his team have to help patients improve their overall health by implementing weight loss programs that work. Dr. Felicia Stoller is also with us, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and exercise physiologist, author of Living Skinny in Fat Genes, the healthy way to lose weight and feel great. She's a former host of TLC's show, Honey, We're Killing the Kids. Dr. Stoller will discuss making better for you food choices, debunking misinformation, which is so critical today, debunking misinformation that we've learned over the years, and we'll discuss the pillars of lifestyle medicine. And we also have an incredible special guest here, Nikki Turney. She's a mental health expert who's been battling obesity since 2012. She's lived it. It's a lived experience, and that is something that is empowering to the folks that are struggling themselves and saying, where do I go from here? Her highest weight was 270 pounds. She's now 145 and holding strong. Congratulations. Nikki's going to talk about the many programs she tried and was finally worked for her. She's also going to share her professional advice about mental health and biological challenges that individuals face when trying to lose weight. And it's really, truly a balance. And if you don't mind, and Nick, we've talked before, I'd like you to tell us your story, because also with Dr. Stoller, you were talking a little bit earlier, and it was just so organic, your conversation, when the doctor was asking, well, what happened? Like, how are you? Like, what did you do? Can you share that story, and let's all just join in and dive into critical information. By the way, we're streaming live, and this content, please share it with your friends and family and people that you care and love, people that you're concerned about, so they're empowered from today's meeting. Go ahead, Nikki.
Sure. Thank you so much. And a very dear friend of mine coined the term, this isn't about Nikki, there are 1,000 Nikkis. And I find this to be true with my lived experience with weight loss as well. By way of brief background, I had a stomach issue when I was 14 and took large amounts of opioids in respect to a life-saving surgery, and then weeks in the intensive care unit. As a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor, I know that one of the highest risk factors for developing substance use disorder is the age of onset and the amount and frequency of medicine you're taking. So that proved true for me. I would later get opioid use disorder, which I've been in sustained remission from about over 15 years now. I also thank you so much. Thank you. I also have multiple mental health diagnoses, depression, generalized anxiety, obsessive compulsive, and post-traumatic stress disorder. So what had happened was, as we know, about half of mental health disorders onset by age 14, 50%, 75 onset before age 23. The average delay in receiving treatment is 10 years. Less than 60% of people ever receive treatment for mental health. And with substance use disorder, it's 1 in 10. So what do people similar to me do, the 1,000 Nikkis? Often we self-medicate. For me, it was opioids. It was pills, what I had gotten when I was 14. And what we do with the pills, what I used to do, I always had to make sure I had a water bottle in case I needed to take pills. I would throw them back into my throat, take them, and thought all my problems were going away, until I tried to die by suicide in 2007 and finally got the evidence-based care I needed. In that kind of gap, I was a practicing attorney. I lost my law license. I was a mother of 4 children. The state came in and removed them from my care, at one point putting a no contact order with them. There were 9 months I couldn't even speak with them. I went to jail. I was involuntarily committed. I overdosed twice. I had a traumatic brain injury. And my point for saying that is just say no to drugs didn't work. This is your brain on drugs wasn't working for me. So when I finally was able to get evidence-based psychiatric care, and I happened not to use medication for opioid use disorder because when I began it wasn't quite as popular, but what happened then, I began throwing sugar in my mouth, same exact thing, rather than the pills. I had some balance of my mental health symptoms, but not enough, and honestly, the sugar worked, sort of, as I said to you. And then I began to I was morbidly obese, and it was impacting my life. I did try portion control. I did try exercise. I was a Division II academic All-American soccer and basketball player. I had been in shape my whole life, and I was so heavy walking to my child's football game, I would become out of breath. It was just horrible. I had sleeve surgery, ate around that, lost 45, gained back 50. The sleeve was converted to gastric bypass, ate around that, and I didn't have any relief until I finally became diabetic. I was on high blood pressure medicine and was prescribed. My specific medicine was Ozempic, which is, again, I'll defer to you to the GLP-1 agonist. I always say it wrong. And it's been life-changing, not just in my physical appearance or numbers, but more importantly, my mental wellness. I no longer have what I hear a lot of people describe as food noise, where all day I ruminate about food, what I'll eat, where I'll eat, what will you think. If you see me eat, you'll think, no wonder she looks like she does. She's a slob. Eating in my car. I used to not be able to travel without taking food with me. I still do that a little, but not as much. But this is the longest, to your point, I've been at any weight consistently since I stopped using opioids. And so when I heard about this opportunity, I think it mirrors the mental health and substance use of, again, just say no, portion control and exercise. I understand those are 2 very important issues, and as we discussed, it's about prevention, awareness, and access to evidence-based care. Again, I share my lived experience, but my lived experience mimics the data that we've seen on this. We've seen tangential preclinical studies about the role it could play with alcohol use disorder. There's been one very small study with only 20 people, but we have found in correlation studies, it's reducing the risk of death from alcohol use disorder and opioid use disorder. So again, I thank you so much for having this conversation, and it's so important.
Well, Nikki, your story is powerful, and there's so much in it.
Yeah.
You know, so and Dr. Stoller, when you're hearing this conversation, the body connection, what are you hearing here when you're speaking a little bit earlier? It's a fascinating story I think from this meeting, I think folks are going to be able to save lives and improve lives from the powerful information that you're sharing in your story. Thank you.
Well, I think the important thing is understanding, removing the stigma, first of all, when it comes to mental health. So it's heartwarming that now people can talk about mental health without feeling ashamed. I think there's a little bit less of it, and I'm grateful for that, because I've been somebody, even though I've focused more on the nutrition and fitness side in terms of lifestyle medicine, it's about the whole person, and we all have people in our families that struggle with mental health issues. And you know, the thing with mental health to remember is a lot of that is tied to your genetics. And it's not that you necessarily do something. And I think that's the most important thing to recognize, is that a lot of it has to do with the DNA that you received. And so how you deal with it and how it manifests is not necessarily something you can control. But what people do sometimes is they do seek drugs and they do seek food to help themselves feel better, because why wouldn't somebody want to feel better? So I applaud you, because I've worked in inpatient eating disorder programs as part of my training, and I saw what kind of experience what they were doing at that time, like over 25 years ago, what was considered evidence-based practice. Nobody was looking at the psychiatric component. What was the underlying condition? You know, it's not just body image. It's an anxiety pathway It's OCD, it's anxiety, it's recognizing that's where it begins. You cannot treat the rest of it until you get to the root of it, because I can say everything to somebody sitting in front of me until I'm blue in the face, but they can't absorb it because their mind is not allowing them to hear it so that they can take the action. And I'm not necessarily saying that everybody needs to be on drugs all the time, but when people do, it can be a lifesaver, as it was for you. And so, my whole thing has always been about prevention. We were talking about it. You had a situation where unfortunately you did end up on opioids. I mean, I watched Dope Sick. Like, that was such a triggering thing for me, because I do have a family member that became addicted from using opioids, and it masked an underlying condition. She ended up having lung cancer, and it was, nobody recognized it for so long because everyone just thought she was addicted to opioids from another procedure. But regardless, food is medicine, and I like to think of it that way. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about what lifestyle medicine is, because it's a whole person approach to wellness. About 8 years ago, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and the American College of Preventative Medicine came together, and they created a credential for folks that were allied healthcare professionals. So it's not like a certification you can do online. You have to already have, at a minimum, a master's or PhD, or a medical, an MD or a DO, in order to become a clinician. But what it is, or to get certified, is it's food, it's physical activity, it's sleep, it's stress management, it's mental health, it's making sure that you are reducing harmful substances. And this is another key thing too, feeling like you have a purpose, living your life with a purpose. So they looked at centenarian regions of the world and why people have lived to be 100 or into their 90s, and what they all had in common. And these were really the foundations of lifestyle medicine. So,
well, let me ask you, some folks just feel overwhelmed by the information, what to do, and where to get their information from. Right? Dr. Fridge, can you speak to that?
The problem is the internet is both a good and bad thing, because you can go on Google right now and find a million different ways to do something, and none of them are really designed to help you. They're just designed to make money for whoever's getting your clicks, etc., and trying to get you to buy this new thing or that new thing. And it becomes a fad approach to weight loss, which I always say the following: the word diet is a 4-letter word. We've got lots of 4-letter words, and they're all dirty for different reasons, right? So,
you know what I say it stands for? Did I eat that?
Nice, fair enough. So if you're going to approach this, it has to be from, you started off with one of my favorite phrases, changing your relationship with food. It's coming up with a full lifestyle, as opposed to, okay, this is what I'm going to do for this long, and then I'm going to lose this much weight. And people can be successful in doing that. The minute you come off of said diet, you're putting it all back on, and the majority of the time you don't just come back to where you started, you swing back to the left more. And that's not a good way to go through life. It's certainly not healthful in the long run. And if you're starting to make changes, it has to be circumferential. It can't just be based on nutrition alone. There has to be an incorporation. Mental health is such a huge part of this, and it has to be, because it's very frustrating. And there's a comedian I used to love, and one of his lines was, "I always eat when I'm sad," and he was a morbidly obese comedian, unfortunately. And there's a truth to that. People hide their emotions in food. It's some people, I think it's a blessing. Unfortunately, I don't have this blessing. When they get upset, they don't eat at all. Right? My wife is smiling over there. She's one of those people. Okay, that's why she's as wonderfully thin as she is. When I get upset, when I get overstressed, I'm an eater. Right? And again, to first say, I applaud your complete bravery, because being as open and honest and truly naked in front of all these people and everybody that's going to be listening to this is transformational. Because at some point, my hope is, and I'm sure this is why you do this, your words will reach someone. And even if it touches one person and changes one life, then all of this was completely worth it. Okay? And I share my story as well. I was a morbidly obese teenager. I was miserable. At 16 years old, I was suicidal. I was 5'6", I weighed 265 pounds. And then I joined Weight Watchers for the first time. I lost 85 pounds over the course of a year and a half. And it was transformational for me in my young life. And it's a battle that continues for the rest of your life. Because unfortunately, once you have morbid obesity, you have obesity for the rest of your life, right? People think, okay, I lose weight, the fat's gone, that's it. It's not the way it works. Unless you have the fat cells that you just destroyed surgically removed, they are just sitting there waiting. And they'll wait for the rest of your life until you start making steadily bad decisions over and over again. And once that starts to happen, what goes on? Well, your entire circulating mixture of hormones changes, your internal body chemistry. So you start having a more inflammatory cascade going on in your bloodstream, and then one fat cell wakes up. And it sees that there's all these free-floating cholesterol esters in your bloodstream, and it starts grabbing onto them and filling back up again. When a fat cell starts filling back up again with cholesterol, it becomes rehydrated. It wakes up out of dormancy. And then what does it do? It starts setting off chemical signals to everything around it to wake up, and putting other chemical signals into your bloodstream to wake up fat cells all over your body. And then the process starts back up again, where you start putting weight back on, and then everything goes down. And we know inflammation is the key to so many different disorders, and it starts that easily.
And that physiology with heart health, can you speak to that? Because some folks, they want to lose weight because they want to feel better, they want their clothes to fit, whatever other different external relationship factors, societal factors, whatever the case may be. But it ties to living and dying, doesn't it? I mean, what can you talk about the actual?
Listen, I don't want to get too deep into the.
We don't have enough time.
We definitely don't. And this isn't a cardiac lecture, but we know heart disease is an inflammatory disorder. So anything that increases your circulating levels of inflammation will increase your risk of having a heart attack, a stroke, having sudden cardiac death. And everything that we're talking about, and that we will be talking about, ties into overall health, let alone cardiac health, right? Being in shape, having a fitness routine, having a nutritious approach to life will impact everything that you have going on. It's not just the heart, even though I think the heart's important.
Well, it keeps us going.
So for the folks that they're listening, they're hearing different things, powerful, compelling stories, they may just, folks in the abbreviated attention span that most folks have, which is difficult as well, when they get right to, what do I do? Where do I start? What do I do? And everybody's different, so this is incredibly generalized. But where do you start? What do you do? And then the implication of medication and food and exercise and all of these different things.
The number one thing that everybody needs to know, you are not alone.
Amen. That's
Okay?
I agree.
It starts with that. And then understanding that we need help with everything. Everything that we do on a daily basis, even down to mental health. I talk to people all the time who are struggling with anxiety. What are you doing for it? Well, I tried to. Have you seen anyone? Because it's almost impossible to do all of that heavy lifting on your own. So finding real help. And it starts with the basics. Don't laugh. Seeing your primary care doctor is where you need to start. You need a baseline. You have to understand what's going on inside your body today, what, if any, damage you have done to your body, and what we need to focus on to improve things. And then, I tell everyone all the time, you need to go see a nutritionist. And it's not a one-time visit. It can't be.
Can I just interject for a second?
Of course.
Because New Jersey just finally passed licensure laws for dietitians a few years ago, and I've been sitting on the licensing board, and we haven't even fully rolled it out yet. There has been no licensure in New Jersey for decades. I fought for 20 years. So anybody, and I used to teach nutrition at Brookdale, and I used to tell the students, you can call yourself a nutritionist. So when you say nutritionist, please, like I encourage people to go to a registered dietitian, nutritionist, because we have specialized academic and board certification training that is important. And for the most part, we're not selling products, and our ethos is to do no harm. So I want to just start with that. So
And sorry, I'll jump in here too. So yes, get help. You are not alone. The bravest thing I ever did was realize I needed support. I just needed help to reach my potential. But I agree that there is unhealthy help, quite frankly. And the one thing that I have seen is, let's look at the social determinants of health. Many people with substance use disorder, mental health disorders, and obesity may not have a primary care, may not have insurance. I happen to work at CPC Integrated Care, and we've worked with them a lot. We are a CCBHC, which I can never say, Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic. And to both of your points, we have registered, licensed, whatever there is. I'm a licensed professional counselor, licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor. Then we work with a list of other professionals to do a couple things. Treat the whole person, of course, but also make sure that basic needs are met. For many people right now, the financial stress is they've lost insurance, they don't have access to primary care, and then we're trying kind of these maladaptive coping mechanisms. So take help from the help. You are not alone, and I'll just do one other plug, 988. If anyone is having a mental health challenge, you can reach out to 988 24/7. 365 days, and you will get a trained person to speak with you. And then to your point, to be linked with the appropriate services, because it's so much more than just abstinence. I can stop taking a substance and take another, or I can stop taking a substance and be symptomatic with my mental health. Right. We have to bring it all together. I was on lisinopril. I'm off it now.
Of course you are, because of the extreme body changes that you have done. And a lot of times, it's funny because I'll have people come in and they think it's a negotiation with me as their doctor, and I am open and honest about saying I don't make decisions for you. I'm letting you know this is what's going on inside of your body. This is what I recommend. But I know when you leave here, you're the one who has to do this, right? And a lot of times the negotiations are around, well, doc, give me 4 months. Let me lose some weight, let me start exercising, and I'm sitting there, and it's November 20th, it's the week before Thanksgiving, and I'm a bad person, but I'm honest, and I tell them, listen, Thanksgiving is coming, if you're layman's in a vowel, Christmas Eve is coming, then Christmas Day is coming, then New Year's Eve is coming, then New Year's Day, and I know what the eating is like around this time of year. That doesn't mean that you can't do it in a healthful way, but I believe in probability. I know what I see. And I'll let them know, listen, I don't want you on medication. It's not my goal. I want you to be healthy. I want you to risk to be this low. But here's the problem. If I say, sure, go out in 4 months, I'll see you back in 4 months and we'll see what's going on. The problem is that person has not been protected in that 4 months. And the probability of them doing everything that they're promising me in that meeting is low. And a transformation, if it's done right, takes a lot longer than 4 months, right? So it takes, and this is why I say, when you go see a dietitian, nutritionist for the first time, write down everything you eat for a week, so that there's value in your initial conversation. But understand this is about education. So you're not going to see that person one time. No, this is about coming back multiple times, going over the changes that you've made and understanding how the changes that you've made are making an impact, but then also being able to discuss, this doesn't work for me. I can't do this. Which is my problem with all the cookie-cutter diets that are thrown out there. Yeah. Oh, if you do this, it's going to be amazing. If you do that, it's going to be amazing. just doesn't work long term.
Yeah,
Right,
and I
and
have a
people-
I just
yeah.
want to say, because I had a question for all of you, and I want you to hold that thought. It's a somewhat loaded question, but folks will say, is there a cure for obesity? Loaded question. And then the follow-up would be, well, what are some of the new treatments, and how does it integrate? Like, is there a cure? Loaded question. What are the new treatments? Because it's still vague, Ozempic, Wegovy, and these kinds of things. And how do you make it go so folks can stop having the conversation and start living life?
Well, we could talk about the drugs in a second, but I really want to talk about the whole prevention, because being a dietitian and exercise physiologist is a third career for me. So that means if my son is 23, I've been a dietitian for 23 years, and obesity, specifically childhood obesity, at that time was on the rise. And I can't believe that with all the information that we know and with all the science that we have to prevent it, we have not prevented childhood obesity, which turns into adult obesity, and the numbers keep going up. So there's no lack of access to information, and there's no lack of access to effective treatment methods. The challenge really begins on some level with a little bit of personal accountability. I do feel that way, because nobody is tying anybody up and shoving food down their throats. Kids don't go to the grocery store and buy foods. They don't get to pick their foods, although sometimes parents, bring their kids, and the kids, want things that maybe a parent does not want. But I think it begins, with parents. It begins during pregnancy, and what parents are doing for themselves and what they feed their children. I've seen people care more about what they feed their dogs than what they feed their pets, than what they feed their children. So there's a little bit of that. Look at schools, like home economics. We should have classes in schools for kids that are life skills. Home economics, really teaching nutrition in schools. Physical education has gone down by the wayside. Like kids, we are eliminating things that are very vital for health and well-being, to instill habits in people over a lifetime, and that's not happening. And then people want to complain about the school lunch program. Have you gone to the school and seen what kids eat? It's not what's available, it's what the kids are choosing. A lot of times kids go to school with lunches that look worse than what is being served by the school food service program. So, I think that those are really important things to think about. And then when you are going out to eat, or when you are choosing to cook for your family, because there's so much talk about ultra-processed foods. Well, I don't eat ultra-processed foods. That's a choice not to eat it. Nobody's making me do it. The food companies are only fulfilling the demand of what people want. So if people want it, then they're going to have it. And when I heard, that some of the food companies are concerned because of all the GLP-1s that people are going to eat less, I'm like, that's right?
It's
Peter?
So I would just tag on to this. Part of the problem, especially when it comes to quality of food, is how cheap it is to eat terribly. Right? It's expensive to eat a nutritious diet. Why is that? A lot of it has to do with government subsidies, and obviously this is not a conversation for that topic, but that's one of the biggest problems. Is it's so much easier to eat in an unhealthy manner, and then if you, unfortunately, morbid obesity, diabetes, kidney dysfunction, cholesterol, hypertension, are more likely to affect those in lower income brackets. And a lot of that has to do with how much it costs to eat in a healthful way or to be a part of a gym. The processed foods are a huge issue because they make things look better. They're throwing these commercials at our kids all day long if they're watching TV or wherever. And that's when it starts. As adults, again, understanding and knowing which way to go and where to make turns is very, very important. But I think this has to be a part of our long-term health solution, right? You said it before. I actually believe in prevention, which makes me a terrible businessman, right? But I do, because I don't want to see people having heart attacks. I don't want to deal with all of the issues. When you see someone who went out and actually did the right thing and they've lost 20 pounds, They come in and their entire affect has changed. They're vibrant. They've got all this energy. They're happy. They feel amazing. Why? Because their biochemistry is humming. Their body is moving better than it has in 20 years. Now, that comes from a combination of nutrition, exercise. Keep in mind, I know that we're talking a lot about weight loss. I look at weight loss as a side effect,
Yes.
not as the goal. The goal has to be living a healthy life, and everything that comes along with that is a side effect. Increased energy, weight loss, feeling sexy, looking great in your bathing suit for the summer, looking great in front of the mirror at home, all of it.
I want to talk
Side
about
effects.
something for a minute, because a lot of folks that are already feeling great, looking great, feeling healthy, eating healthy would say, you know what, you just gotta, you gotta move more and eat less food. What's your problem, right? So, but that's dovetail, because you could have another 10 years. Yeah. So now you're 22, now you're 32, you're 32, now you're 42. You read you saw all the books, you heard all the fantastic commentary. So what I'm getting at is, how does that dovetail with there are implications and uses for certain cohorts with the Ozempics and the GLP-1s, I believe, because I want to hear your story, because you have a story you were sharing with Dr. Stoller about that a little earlier,
right,
about how it was different for you.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Morbid obesity, substance use disorder, they are not curable. They are chronic medical conditions. Like every medical condition, behavior plays a role, accountability plays a role, our schemas play a role, what we think of things. But basically what happens is we are rewiring our reward pleasure center as well as our neurotransmitters and all of these things, and we are actually taking our judgment away. We're taking our own ability to be accountable away.
Is that why it's so hard?
Exactly, and that's why we see 100,000 people dying from drug-related overdoses. That's why we see preventable. That's why we see childhood obesity. To your point, we also have food deserts where there's not access to healthy food. So to me, we can't, you said it's the symptom. We need to address the why. If we would address the why, all of these manifestations of the core issue would go away. And that may be being overweight, it may be using substances, gambling, shopping, pornography. We know this, social media, all of these things that are external ways to regulate emotions. We have to begin with the protective factor of prevention to teach children how to internally regulate emotions. And if we do that, hopefully we wouldn't get to the point of needing medicine, therapy, and intervention. However, having lived this, if you need medicine, you need medicine. I need medicine. I would not be alive today if not for mental health medicines and, quite frankly, the GLP-1 agonist. It's just that simple.
Felicia, you
right.
were,
Well, what I wanted to say too is that you can take the GLP-1 agonist and still eat poorly, which doesn't fix the other things. So I wanted to really, talk about eating, because that was something with the holidays coming up. I wanted to talk about also with regards to the fact that the dietary guidelines came out last week. And something that's very important to note, that people get lost in the details, but at the end of the day, they can be summed up very easily. The focus was on eating more plant-based foods, specifically foods that had fiber, and even on the protein sources, beans and legumes really took a nice place in terms of their presence. And as Marion Nessel, who I saw last week in the city at the New York Produce Show, was saying, is that like since 1980, the guidelines have pretty much said the same thing. People think it's always so novel, and everybody wants to point a finger that people that were in it, or they work for industry. And then I was on a call with somebody who was on the guidelines committee, who said he basically was on a call weekly for 2 years for free, like 2 hours a day. Like, people volunteer their time to do it. So we like to just point our fingers at it, but eat foods closer to the way they're found in nature. right? If you can cook it yourself, great. I remember being in grad school thinking, like, why would somebody buy bagged washed lettuce? Well, eventually I became a working mom with 2 kids, and it was easier to buy bagged washed lettuce, and now you can get all types of vegetables pre-chopped. I know that they cost a little bit more money, but whether it's fresh, even if it's canned or frozen, I would rather see people eat vegetables, not fried versions of them, but I'd rather see people eat the vegetables, no matter whether it's fresh, frozen, or canned, than eat no vegetables, because heart disease is still the #1 killer in the United States. And whether it's got GMOs, whether it's organic or not, is irrelevant. It has to do with the quality of your food, right? You need fiber, you need plants to
You need to
ward
have
off
a well-rounded diet.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for saying that. You need to have a well-rounded food plan, right? And you can speak to this better than I can from a data standpoint, but protein is important, right? Carbohydrates are important, but they need to be complex so that you're not spiking your glycemic index the minute you put the food in your mouth, right? So what problems are we dealing with? We're dealing with a lack of understanding, a complete lack of information, at a time when there's more information available than God knows what to do with. And the problem is, you go online, you don't know which way to go, which way to trust, and then people need help. And what do they see? They see the low-hanging fruit, which is the cheap help to get online, right? So we were talking about this before with the new medications that are available, and I am not discounting that they are important. They are. When appropriate medically, they are very important and can vitally change everything. They can move people from having a hemoglobin A1C, which is the kind of level of long-term blood sugar in your bloodstream over the course of 3 months, from 7, 8, 9, down to below diabetic levels. It's dramatic. It's a part of the solution. To get back to your original question, I agree with you. I think once you have obesity, you have it. There's no cure for it. There is just treatment, and the honest treatment is lifestyle. Numbers 1, 2, and 3 has to be lifestyle. And then if you need accessory help, we have that for you now. But things are different, right? I was talking about it before. People don't know anything about exercise.
That was exactly where I was going with the last 10 minutes of this segment.
It's important.
Let's talk about that.
Right? It's the difference between when I say the word exercise is, what are you actually doing? And that's where you have the great divide, the battle of the sexes. You can't use the phrase weightlifting or weight training with women. You can't. The minute you do, you've lost 99% of your audience. Agree or disagree?
I agree. That's why I use the word physical activity. It's less, it's a little easier for people to sort of
there's
digest
no
it.
associative activation. I
because
feel like exercise is...
It has a very, I don't want to say a stigma, but a very specific
does.
set of ideas. So what research has shown is just something as simple as walking is really beneficial for health. And a lot of people, whether it's your phone or you have a watch or something that can track your physical activity, it's very important. 2,000 steps a day approximately is the equivalent of a mile. And we want to encourage people to walk at least 5 miles a day if they can. One thing to think about, if you're working at a job, can you have, like, my watch will cue me on the hour if I'm sitting too long to stand up and walk around. In my graduate research, I used to tell folks, take a 5-minute walk every hour. If you're at your job for 8 hours a day, you can accumulate 40 minutes of physical activity. Park further in the parking lot, take the stairs. These are all things that, they sound cliche, but they work. We were designed to move, not to sit on our rear ends all day long. And whatever it is that you're willing to do is what you should do. Something that you like. It could be dancing. It could be yard work.
dancing.
Yoga?
It could be
I'm
cleaning.
yoga,
Yoga.
meditation?
I'm going to disagree on one point only. If you are on these new medications, it is absolutely incumbent upon you to be doing some level of resistance training. Walking is not enough. Dancing is not enough. It's not. Why? The whole problem is the majority of people believe when they go on these GLP-1 antagonists that they are going to just lose fat. All the weight they're losing is fat, and it's not. And this is why I'm getting involved, because I've been through this with way too many of my patients over the last year and a half that have been started on these meds blindly, have not been given the right information, don't understand about what levels of protein intake they should be hitting, and definitely do not understand how important the weight training portion of it is, because up to between a third and up to a half of the weight you are losing is muscle tissue, skeletal muscle. I'm very concerned that in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have an epidemic of people in their late 50s and 60s who are becoming wheelchair bound because they've lost too much skeletal muscle mass. That scares the hell out of me.
Well, humans as we age do naturally lose muscle mass anyway, so that's important to know that by the time you reach 60, even in your 50s, but by the time you reach 60, it is even more important. It's bone density and muscle mass. So when people are often looking at just the number on the scale, I always remind them it's really more important to focus on your body composition, because the number on the scale can vary even in a day up to 4 or 5 pounds based upon water weight. So muscle mass is important for healthy aging. It allows you to do your activities of daily living so that you're not wheelchair bound, but just to have the strength, right, to lift your grandchildren. I've explained this to some of my clients, you know, to lift something off of a high shelf. It's range of motion, it's flexibility, and in fact, balance training is one of the most important things you need to do with aging too, because we hear a lot about older people falling and having hip fractures, and balance training is an integral part of that.
I wanted to bring up one item before we wrap, because we wanted you to share your thoughts that you want folks to leave here today with, and folks, because thousands of folks are going to see this content streaming on YouTube, Facebook, etc. We talked about food and exercise and things, but getting back to food, the timing of when you're eating. Can we speak briefly to intermittent fasting when you're eating, and how autophagy may interface with and accelerate kind of like a force multiplier for your efforts? And then we're gonna wrap up with the final comments you want to share, and how can folks reach out to you to learn more?
Go ahead.
All right, so I just want to start by saying the word breakfast means to break your fast. So we live in a world that, because of electricity and fire and lights, like, we've extended the time period of day that we actually eat food. And I think it's really important to be mindful of how many hours a day you're eating. I'm not going to be so prescriptive and say only eat during this time and that time, but I'm just going to suggest that, especially for adults, you know, whenever your hunger cue begins, and for everybody it's different. I personally have been doing intermittent fasting for over 6 years now, so it's something that works with me, and it works for me. But if you think about it, humans spent daylight hours looking for food. They spent all day, like, you know, looking for food, and they could only eat what they could find during the day, and then they'd go to sleep at night. So just be mindful of the amount of hours a day that you are eating food, because we don't need to eat endlessly, mindlessly, and we should be eating with purpose.
Thank you.
I completely agree. I think the most important takeaway for the question about intermittent fasting is that it's not for everybody. It's not. It has to work for how you feel. It has to work for your body composition, right? So, you know, 2 years ago, I was down to 11% body fat, thinking about getting on a stage. There's no way I could fast overnight. I'd start burning more muscle, which I was trying to maintain. So it's a matter of knowing what your content is and keeping an eye on that as you continue to lose weight. Certainly there's plenty of data out there to suggest that intermittent fasting absolutely helps in promoting autophagy, which no one out there is going to know, and they're going to Google it and get dangerous, but that's okay. It's a matter of cellular repair. It's something that's intrinsic to all of our bodies. It's helpful, especially in converting fat into usable energy sources when we are, in fact, in that empty state or not eating, fasting. And it's a very important part of the overall body recomposition move. You don't just have to fast to induce it, though. It's what most people don't recognize. You can also achieve high levels of autophagy through HIIT, right? High-intensity interval training, which is just as important. The problem is the majority of people that I'm dealing with aren't able to perform to that level, right? So then it becomes a matter of understanding the basics of exercise, knowing what you should be doing, and that's where, again, we have this great divide of the sexes. Because if I talk to male patients about exercise, oh yeah, I go to the gym, and then you ask the question, what does that mean? And 99% of the time, this is what you get. Oh, I lift weights. And now you're dealing with a 65-year-old man who's doing the same workout he was doing in high school. And I'm there with, you can't do that. This isn't important. I don't care about your glory muscles, you know, your arms and your shoulders, your chest. That has no impact on your long-term health. Your legs, your butt, your back, your core. These are the most important muscle groups, and they're the biggest muscle groups in your body.
And
By the way, the more muscle mass you have, the more fat you burn while you're sleeping at rest.
So we're going to go into the
yeah.
final comments. Nikki, share
So,
what
yeah,
you...
just very briefly, I wanted to encourage everybody, get to know yourself. To your point, we know that there are evidence-based ways, resistance training, the high-intensity training, fasting, meditation, yoga. We have cognitive behavioral therapy. Change the way we think about things. It helps us change our behavior. We have to bring all of these together, again, for integrated care. So get to know you. Build wellness into your day, whether it be parking a little further away, taking a breath, surrounding myself with positive people. Let me take care of all of my domains each day. Just like I brushed my hair, let me take care of my mental wellness, my physical health, my, again, love it, the relationship with food. Get to know you. Get to know you.
Thank you so much. Felicia,
course.
thank you.
Yes. So, yeah, I agree with
And how do folks reach you, too?
Oh, yeah. So I'm FeliciaStoller.com. That's just it myself. Yeah, I'm here in Homedale, and I work with people remotely, and I do a number of public health initiatives as well.
Thank you for that.
And sorry, I'm so
yes.
sorry. Can I just say one quick thing?
She cut me off.
This is so important, though. CCBHCs, if you don't have insurance, absolutely can take you. You do not need insurance. CPC, you can call. We have 4 locations. You do not need insurance. You can get help, and we work consistently with all of our partners in the community. So hopefully that will decrease barriers. Back to you.
Dr. Farrugia, bring us home here. Tie it all together for us.
Listen, first and foremost, happy holidays to everybody out there listening to this, and we are all very appreciative of your time, everybody that came here today, and of the opportunity to speak. For me, it's simple. I want to help. The women to the left of me want to help. But we can't make you do anything. Everything starts with a single choice, the desire to change. I am always here. I will walk with you through your desert and hopefully come out the other end. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to make the changes that are necessary, nothing's ever going to work. There's no magic pill. There's no magic shot. These things will help, but there's a lot of information that comes with it that you're not getting if you're just going online and ordering it, because you don't even know where it's coming from, let alone all the different things that these new medications can do to you, and they can and will hurt you. So please, see trusted local physicians, local experts that are here to help you.
How do folks reach you, Dr. Farrugia?
So you can find us. We're at Advanced Heart and Vascular, or ahvcj.com. We are opening up, like you said, our dynamic weight loss and wellness solutions, and we'll go from there.
I want to thank all of you for, I would say, one of the most powerful hours we've had in the Monmouth Regional Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank everyone for being here today. We're time constrained, but we want to thank you for being here. The guests will be here for a couple of minutes. I'm sorry, Jeannie, what was that? What's that? Oh, okay. So, Therese, thank you so much for all the work that you do. Everyone have a fantastic week, and we hope that this powerful information, just for yourself and your family, share with your friends and make a difference in everyone's life. And Nikki, thank you so much for your powerful story.
Thank you so much. You have
Dr.
supported
Stoller,
me
Dr.
through
Farrugia.
everything. Thank
well,
you.
we're all here together. Thank you, folks. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and have a blessed New Year.